last meeting before our workshop in this subcommittee of meeting of the Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Council. We're here for CRMC file number 2017-12-086 in the matter of Perry Raso's application to establish a 3-acre oyster and bay scallop farm using floating and suspended gear in Potter Pond, South Kingstown, Rhode Island. We are on January 29th, 2021 date. It is 10:09 a.m. And I'm going to go through the members of the subcommittee. When I call your name, you can please indicate that you're here. Myself, Jennifer Cervenka, Chair. Raymond Koya, Vice Chair.
Raymond Koya is present.
Thank you. Patricia Reynolds.
Patricia Reynolds, present.
Thank you. Don Gomez.
Don Gomez, present.
Thank you. And finally, Vin Murray, our South Kingstown representative.
Vin Murray is present.
Thank you. From staff, we have our Executive Director, Jeffrey Willis.
Here, Madam Chair.
Our Chief Legal Counsel, Tony DeSisto.
Here, Madam Chair.
Our Aquaculture Coordinator, Ben Getz. Ben?
Ben,
Oh, sorry, I had a issue with my audio. I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, just if you can just indicate that you're here.
Yes, present, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ryan Moore, our CRMC moderator.
Here, Madam Chair.
Lisa Turner, our recording secretary.
Present, Madam Chair.
Lisa Reese, our court reporter.
Present.
Thank you. And then we also have visible counsel for the applicant, Beth Noonan, Leslie Parker, as well as the applicant, Mr. Perry Raso. And for the objectors, we have Christian Capizzo and John Baynert and Dean Wagner. So we are going to start today with finishing up on our list of those in the public who would like to comment on this application, either for or against. And I have a list from our recording secretary. I believe that has been shared with those attending so they can see the list. And I'll start with Matthew Meyer. Again, please keep your comments to between 5 and 10 minutes so that we can get through the remainder of our list today. Mr. Moore, could you admit Mr. Meyer?
Mr. Meyer, if you're in the attendees, can you please raise your hand to be identified? I do not see you on here. Mr. Meyer? Madam Chair, I do not see him in the list, and he has not come forward to identify himself by any of the unnamed people in the attendees room.
Okay. Remind me to come back to him if I forget, but we're going to move on to Michael Sassy.
Thank you, Michael.
Mr. Sassy, I need you to unmute yourself and put on your video.
Got it. And we'll start it. Okay, there I am.
We got you.
Okay, thank you. I am Michael Sassy. My wife and family, we've been in Matunic Point area for our whole lives. We own a property on Ninigret, and we use the pond with the moorings off our beach club, and enjoyed the pond for many, many years. I'm an environmental biologist by degree. I have a master's in business administration finance. My business is in the energy and sustainability arena. And what we do is help clients reduce their carbon footprint, achieve zero carbon neutrality. And we're very much into sustainability. And like I said, I'm an environmentalist, so I care deeply about the environment. I just wanted to preface that in that residing on the pond for all these years, I strongly support the oyster and scallop bed in the location on Seager Cove. And the two reasons primarily are the fact, from an environmental standpoint, I believe the oyster scallop bed has a positive impact on the environment. So simply, they're filtering the water, and that's a very positive thing. And they're cleaning the environment as they live and grow. From that standpoint, I'm fully supportive. And from the recreational standpoint, I've had a 15-foot whaler with a 70 horsepower motor. I've certainly been through that channel. There's ample room in the channel to water ski and do anything you'd like to do with that size watercraft. It probably doesn't support much anything larger. So from a recreational standpoint, I truly believe it has little or no impact at all. So the oyster bed would certainly be well marked, and recreation which would just not simply be affected. Plenty of room to kayak, and the bed itself is tucked into the corner as you enter Seager Cove. It's in the perfect strategic location. So with that said, I just want to go on record that I'm a very strong supporter, and look forward to the business opportunity that Perry has in front of him. And I'm sure he'll be a very good steward, as he has been for many, many years on the pond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sassy. Okay, next we have Faye Panazopoulos.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to speak. I'm Faye Pantazopoulos. I'm the creative director of the South County Tourism Council, but I'm commenting today not just as an employee, but also as a South County resident. I'm in favor of granting Perry permission for his farm. The last time we did this, I was hearing a lot of testimony opposing the farm from seasonal residents, not visitors. And I can assure you, as an employee of the Tourism Council, visitors flock to the farm, not just the restaurant. It's one of our main attractions here in South County, and they all want to know where their food comes from. And there's no better illustration of the farm to table than Matunic Oyster Bar. South County visitors love the shellfish farm, the tours, and mostly the education that Perry provides, where they learn how shellfish farms are good for the environment. This has made South County a leader in ecotourism, and tourism is one of the top 3 economic engines in our state, but #1 in South County. Perry is a great ambassador for the region. His business greatly benefits not only the environment and the tourism industry, but in turn the local economy. As a South County resident, I'm in support of Perry being granted permission to have his farm, mostly for the benefits the farm brings to the environment and the local economy. There's no doubt that shellfish aquaculture is good for the environment. It's a fact. What is bad for the environment is recreational uses such as jet skiing and water skiing. Both are noisy, cause a lot of pollution, degrade the shoreline and the flora of the pond. where shellfish clean up much of the pollution that we humans cause and help preserve the environment. Another objection has been that the farm is a safety hazard. The farm would be visible enough for people to steer clear of it, and parents should be cautious of allowing small children unsupervised in the pond, whether there's a farm there or not. Any activity out on the water can be dangerous, and caution should be executed by anyone engaging in water recreation. Lastly, I'd like to address the concern that Perry's somehow selling his seafood nationally is only good for him personally. This past year, I was so happy to be able to send my brother and my sister-in-law fresh seafood for Christmas because they moved to Mississippi recently and they missed the shellfish from here. And the first thing they said when they thanked me is that they can't wait to be able to visit and go to the restaurant when the pandemic is over and they can travel again. And I hear that from travel writers that I work with and send gifts to. And giving people a taste of what can be experienced here only entices them to come visit, and that benefits us all. And I'd like to conclude by saying allowing Perry to expand his farm benefits everyone by preserving our environment and boosting our economy. I hope my comments will help you approve his application to expand his farm. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Larry Pierce.
Hi, I'm Larry Pierce. I own a home on Green Hill Pond. My background, lifelong Rhode Island resident. Is my audio on? Can people hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I am a Rhode Island resident my entire life. When I was a child, I went to Camp Fuller on Point Judith Pond. It had a profound impact on me. I went there for 11 summers. It established in me a love for South County and the waterways, Point Judith Pond. I always dreamed of owning a home down here, and now I do. It's on Green Hill Pond. A childhood friend of mine also went to Camp Fuller, shared the same dream. He bought a home on Seeger Cove. Now, while I was at Camp Fuller, I learned two skills. One was water skiing, where ultimately I became the water ski director after 11 years. So I became proficient in the sport. Also sailing. We learned to sail on that pond and learn to love that, love the water and sailing, so much so that I made a career of it and became a licensed US Coast Guard 100-ton captain. So that gives me a perspective on the water from a water skiing perspective and as a licensed captain and a navigator with over 50,000 sea miles under my belt. So I'd like to dispute the fact, dispute that the farm will not impact recreation, and it will indeed impact recreation, water skiing in particular. When you enter that Seeger Cove, there's a narrow channel that you enter from the east. As you get into the cove, the proposed farm sets to the north, or you go in and you go to the south, which remains open. There is currently just enough room in there without the farm to water ski, but just enough. One can go the length of the pond, maybe get 3 turns in, then turn around and go back north. Get another 3 turns in, turn around, go back south. Okay, you put that farm there, you have eliminated the entire north of the cove's navigable waters. It's not just where the farm is, but you need a buffer zone of access for boats to get in and out of there, working and otherwise. That will eat up, the farm will eat up the entire north. It will eliminate water skiing in that pond. However, people will still try to do it. They may try in tubing. And one of the phenomena in water skiing is that when you're taking a turn, it's called cracking the whip. And when you turn, the person behind the boat, no matter what they're riding, be it a tube or a ski or a skimboard or what have you, will accelerate in that turn 2 to 3 times what the boat speed is. Somebody loses it on that turn, they go flying right into that oyster farm, scallop farm. And there's going to be people who are going to be hurt. Now, experienced people are going to know enough not to do it. It's the inexperienced people will go in there and make a mess of things. And for that reason alone, I object to it. As far as, excuse me one sec, I have some notes here I want to refer to. Okay, sorry. I have to tell you that when I hear the environmental people saying it's good for the environment, every time that you mess with the environment, anytime you alter it, there are always unintended consequences. And as far as tourism goes, if there's tourism that is coming to see these farms specifically, well, there's plenty of farms already around for them to see. They don't need to travel into Cedar Cove to see another one. There are farms closer to the restaurant that people can access. Mr. Raso, I respect what he's accomplished. I respect what he's done. I'm in favor of business, but I just simply don't see the benefit is largely on Mr. Rasso's side, and the residents who have been enjoying Cedar Cove for generations, it's getting stolen from them. It's as simple as that. It will not be used for any, you might get a paddleboard in there, you might get a kayak in there, sailing's done, water skiing, all motorboating's done. And it's just not fair. There's not enough room. And I question why, if Mr. Raso wants this scallop farm, I believe he has a home in not Cedar Cove, but on the north part of the pond. And why don't you put it in front of, why doesn't he put it in front of his house instead of somebody else's house? I don't know. My friend, my dear friend, childhood friend, bought a home 4 years ago on Cedar Cove, specifically with the notion to enjoy it recreationally. And now I've joined him. We're out there 3 mornings a week in the summer water skiing in our 60s, trying to stay young, enjoying it. And if this gets taken away from us, it's very upsetting. And there's a lot of other people who are enjoying that cove, and it's just simply going to be taken away from the public use. I don't care what the tourism or the environmentalists say. I can assure you that cove is finished if this farm is allowed. So I've said my piece. Thank you for hearing me, and do what you must. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Okay, next we have Thomas Liska. Mr. Liska, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry. I don't know how I got unmuted, but
That's okay.
Start from the top
How do
again.
you pronounce your last name?
Liska.
Leska. Okay. Go
Okay.
ahead, Mr. Leska.
And I'm a resident of East Matunic. I also have a home in Matunic. I enjoy my little Boston whaler to go into both ponds, especially where Perry is doing the oystering. It's peaceful, it's relaxing, it's very enjoyable. He is doing great progress. I can't say more about how clean the pond is now and how refreshing it is to go in there. I take my grandchild, who's 4 years old, my little whaler, and we have the best time ever. And I would like to see the Yahoos stop, because one day I was out there with my grandson and my wife, and some Yahoo comes flying up at 40 miles an hour, right where Perry's putting that bed, and like almost ran my boat. There's plenty of room for people to go on the other side, the Matunic side, to jet ski, water ski. It's very protected where he is. I cherish having on the board of directors for 15 plus years, Camp Fuller. I never went there, but I just love the place. We're trying to partner up with Perry as well for the students to get that kind of education. And I just think the cleanliness is just on and on and on, growing and growing and growing. And having built the NBC CSO project, working on the EPA projects, I just think the bay is getting cleaner and cleaner, and that's what it's all about. I don't know if there's a negative about it. And to some people, I've heard a lot of people talk about jet skiing, water skiing in that pond. It's dangerous. It's shallow, and you got to be real careful. There was a death many, many years ago by a youngster water skiing in that pond. So I think it's a great location. It's very protected. There isn't many people impacted in that area as far as the view of where it's on the water anyways, and it's not that obnoxious. I see other communities, Duxbury, Mass, loading up with farms, and it's just helping everybody, helping the environment, helping South Kingstown. I'm sure Perry pays quite a few tax money to the town of South Kingstown and the state of Rhode Island, and he employs a couple hundred people every year. So I would just like to see it continue to grow and grow and grow.
Thank you. Is that your comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, and next we will take Mark Cavanaugh. Mr. Cavanaugh, I can't see you or hear you. You'll have to unmute and turn on your video. Mr. Moore, could you, I guess, send him something in the chat about how to unmute, turn on his video? Mr. Cavanaugh, if you hover over your screen and the bottom left-hand side of it, you should see the mute and the video.
I've been sending him requests to start his video and his audio, and I get a response with that he will start his video later.
Okay, well, I guess we at least need to hear him if he would like to make comments.
Mr. Cavanaugh, if you're having technical issues, can you please use the chat box and relay them to me? Should we come back to him?
That's probably a good idea. So if you can take him off for now, indicate that we'll come back to him once he figures out his technology. If he figures out his technology, and we'll go with William Letty next.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, you're sideways.
All right, let's see if I can be upside down then. How's that?
That's good, thank you.
Okay, great. Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to be heard today. My name is William Letty and I reside at 181 Washington Street in Matunic. I maintain a power vessel and a mooring in Seeker Cove for use in Seeker Cove. I'm a retired Coast Guard officer and a licensed captain. In addition to recreational boating, I use Seeker Cove for sailing, paddleboarding, kayaking, and shell fishing. I believe if this lease is granted in its proposed configuration, it will have a significant impact on the traditional use of Seeker Cove by creating an inherent hazard to navigation. Not only would the proposed lease force compression of existing uses of the area, but compress those uses into an area now to be bounded by a serious entanglement hazard. Suppose a child tubing adjacent to the lease is accidentally thrown into this site. If an entanglement incident does occur there, who will respond? Can the harbor master or the Coast Guard respond to this site? Can the local volunteer fire department respond? Will any of these agencies be trained in this type of emergency? Furthermore, would the lease be bonded and insured against accidents of this nature being installed so close to these traditional use activities? I personally believe this is the wrong site for a lease of this type and strongly urge denial of this application. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Letty. We have Lewis James.
There we go. Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts. And given unlimited time and my tendency to elaborate too much, I've got some prepared comments, but I'll focus on my personal experience and knowledge of Seeker Cove and Potter's Pond.
Thank you.
First of all, my name is Lewis James, and my family has lived in Matunic for nearly a decade now. I've known about the area for decades because my family has had a lobster and fishing business in Connecticut, and I fished out of Block Island Sound quite a bit. So I am an ardent supporter of aquaculture in general. And for purposes of full disclosure, I do have friends who have leases on other ponds. We don't live on a pond, we live within a mile, but we're on a pond frequently. We kayak an awful lot, and we paddleboard, swim, and do a lot of clamming and fish, of course, just like lots of other folks. And we do this all hours of the day, during the summer and off season, and even though it's cold, we're out there, frozen hands and feet, but it's worth it, of course. And as mentioned by others, we've clammed very often. We get tons of clams in that near that proposed lease area. I guess we're a bit better clammers than Perry, I guess. But as my towering clam shell pile will attest, we're pretty productive. And because it's in that area, we're very concerned about the site that's being proposed, because it's a productive clamming area. And over the years, again, we spent a lot of time in the cove and in Potter's Pond in general, with all the different coves, east and to the west. And I want to explore that further with you. because it might help, people see the, and myself, it helped to see the forest from the trees, because there's so many details that are out there on this site. What I want you to appreciate is the fact that Cedar Cove it's a small and sheltered, and it's an isolated cove. And it's got a very narrow channel. I've heard it's, described as wide. It's a very narrow channel that's connecting it with the larger pond, and the water current and the exchange is relatively low from what I can notice. This is my personal experience again. And I want you to appreciate that Cedar Cove also, it's really unique. It's not like others in the pond system. It's a sheltered cove. It's relatively narrow east and west, and it's, long north and south, but it's protected by land in the west. So the leeward area stays really calm even during windy days, so that's an ideal spot for families and to play most of the time, most of the day, on or off season. And there really is no substitute within close proximity for folks, particularly, young and the older ones among us. And when you paddle around the whole area, you'll notice that Potter's Pond is a series of interconnected coves, almost like a cluster of grapes. It's not like these larger ponds, have got, that are host to other, leases, where they're open waterways, high flow, and they're predominated by a large body of water. That's not the case with Cedar Cove. It's very isolated. And again, has that very low flow is from what I can tell. But nonetheless, I've heard comments from witnesses, where there's no data or very limited data for Cedar Cove, that they think that information on the larger coves can be relied upon in discussing ecological capacity, carrying capacity, and to some extent the social capacity, carrying capacity of Cedar Cove. And I have to completely disagree that you can't apply the data about these large bodies of water, with high water flow, like Potter's, Quaney, Ninigrid, and Narragansett. Most of us have been on all those. You can't apply those to Cedar Cove, with any confidence. That analysis and conclusions based on that approach are questionable at best, I would say. The second point I'd make is with regard to the environmental condition of Cedar Cove. We've just heard some comments just today. It's my personal experience, that the pond, that cove area in particular is very clear and thriving environment, as well as a delicate one, and that's the status right now. The osprey nest, there's osprey nests on the shoreline to the east of that project. There's kingfishers, bitterns, weasels, all manner of wildlife on the land, and they're there today. And in the water, there's plenty of fish, all types of fish. Stripers, there's healthy flora in the water, and that's today. And I'll note that, the shell fishing in that area hasn't been closed any time over the past 10 years that I've been clamming there. And this is not a hypothetical, that are the conditions today. But again, I've heard applicants' team suggest that the project, it's not only environmentally benign, that they can go further and say that the project could very well environmentally enhance the Cedar Cove. I would suggest that this really is a red herring and it's a false narrative and misleading. It's fabricating a problem that does not exist to support the position that the project is environmentally benign. So the bottom line is that I think that the board should really ignore any suggestion that the project offers environmental benefits to Cedar Cove. It's perfectly fine today. And at best, the project does nothing but create uncertainty. Just a couple outstanding questions I have today is, what are the impacts of the cormorants and the gulls, on the nesting ospreys and the wildlife there today? There are hundreds of cormorants and gulls that are attracted to the applicant's current lease, sitting on floating, the buoys that are used on the floating oyster gear. And what's the impact really of their defecation on the shellfish and the fishing environment there, particularly in this small concentrated area? These are just two immediate, questions that I have, and you got to consider worry about what other unintended consequences there'd be. We'd have to deal with if this project goes forward. And another issue that was just brought up, and it's a deep-seated and genuine concern, is safety. I can't believe and understand how someone could say that it wouldn't have an impact on the safety of people that are active in that area. So there's lots of active activity, and many times there's multiple uses simultaneously, but young and old alike again. We're all watching out for each other. We're all out there, and we need to leave a wide berth to keep everyone safe. And I'll note that those USGS maps that have been referred to overstate the usable portion of the cove. And this has been demonstrated by the opposition team, but it's worth reemphasizing because I don't think it's appreciated. And it's mischaracterized. Says, really, we don't kayak and ski in 2 inches of water, and we don't kayak or ski or, be active around the docks that are jutting out from the shore or around the dozens of moorings that are in the southern part of the cove. We're all staying towards the main body of the cove using the all available, area as we can in that limited space, especially with multiple users, and that is very often. So the point is that there's no doubt that if you eliminate a portion of that Seeger Cove and you reduce the size of that usable waterway there, and given that folks will continue to use the waterway as they have for decades, that there's going to be the higher risk, and God forbid there result in some physical harm to us. And people will be out there. There's no doubt about it. And I really do. I highlight this because I respectfully note, some skepticism in the board members, about this real and serious issue. And I'll also mention that the board should recognize that there's potential safety issues created when there's more traffic that's forced out into the Potter's Pond area in that channel that's just north of the existing lease. As you force people out of Seeger Cove, they're going to go to the north to other areas where they're looking for some more space. And as the workboats come in into Seeger Cove. And I recognize, and I'm not exaggerating about the number of workboats. Yes, they're limited, but there's already a lot of traffic in that narrow channel where all the boats and the kayaks and and others are forced into that and funneled into that channel just north of the lease. So at the end of the day, you're basically causing even more traffic in that area, both from Seeger Cove and from that western part of Potter's Pond. Now, just in general, I don't want to get too technical on this. It's not my role of expertise, but I mean, I understand that cost benefit analysis is accepted as a tried and true litmus test for evaluating these projects. And with regarding this project, this application, it seems to me that it's pretty evident that the costs are quite evident. There really is a risk of deterioration of safety and health and security of individuals. There really is a loss of quiet enjoyment of a public space by this community. And there's a risk of environmental consequences that we don't know about, some unintended consequences, and negative impact on plant and animal life, on land and the water. And I'm, serious about these concerns. I just don't throw them out there, willy-nilly. And regarding the benefits, okay, all projects have got supposed benefits, and I appreciate what Perry has done. We all applaud him. We see it, this project and this site in particular is just not appropriate. But what I could say about individual, proposed benefits is that any macroeconomic benefits that might be stated, direct wages, employment, secondary commercial impacts, they are always overstated. The environmental benefits, I think, are questionable. They're misplaced, they're self-serving, and they're overstated. And with regard to the idea that these projects support the state's aquaculture program, I believe that to a certain extent, but I still think that's highly questionable. Because, rather this kind of project, and if it's approved, I think it really does jeopardize the continued support by the public. And notwithstanding, as you know, and you've heard from others, that these, most that are making comments against this project have been long supporters of the aquaculture initiatives. But I believe, as well as, and it's been voiced that, we believe that enough is enough, and that this application is the wrong project in the wrong place. And so in closing, and I know I'm running against my time here, but, in general, as the board is being stewards of public lands and waterways, you shouldn't accept any project, proposed in Seeger Cove, this one or any in the future, that's nothing less than absolute and has overwhelming and unequivocal net benefit. You got to we really rely on you using your common sense to assess, the many issues that are associated with this application, where the unfortunate thing about it is the applicant has nothing to lose and all to gain, and the public is put in a defensive position to kind of defend what we have, and with basically no upside. And in this case, I'm sorry to say, but the only one definable and most certain benefit, and being really critical about whether or not there are any, it's going to accrue to the community of one. And I'm sorry to say it's to the applicant himself, and it'll be at the expense of the community and the public, and who have been exemplary stewards of the cove and of the pond for so many years. So that's what I have to say. I really appreciate the time to share my thoughts with you.
Thank you, Mr. James. Next, Beverly Hodgson.
Hello, my name is Beverly Hodgson, and my backyard on Ocean Avenue on Matunic Point slopes down to Potter's Pond. For 35 years, my family and I have lived on Matunic Point on the ocean side of the pond, and from our windows and deck, we look directly across to the cove at issue. So we see every day what the recreational use is at all hours. We are big users of small boats on the pond. We used to be able to sail a sunfish out to the pond, but Mr. Raso's present operation takes up so much area that it's become impossible to tack out into the pond without getting into the channel that's used by speedboats. So we had to give up that use of the pond for the sake of Mr. Raso's business. For 18 years, we have enjoyed rowing single sculls, which sit very low in the water, and they have oars with a 15-foot spread. Mr. Raso, who does not live within view of this cove, said that he looked at the use at noon, which is the least likely time for recreation. I row my scull early in the morning or near sunset when the wind is down, and I do it almost daily in the summertime. The safest, most protected route is directly from our backyard north into Seeger Cove. As others have told you repeatedly, the mouth of the cove is narrow, and there is a shallow rocky part on the east side, so speedboats have to make wide turns. I have counted up to 25 speedboats moored or docked in the cove, so there's considerable traffic. The way to stay safe for those of us in sculls or kayaks and paddleboards is to hug the shoreline that Mr. Raso wants to block off. I have often had to row like mad to get out of the way of water skiing and tubing in this area so that I'm not hit or swamped by close wake. If you allow Mr. Raso to monopolize the area for its exclusive use, that recreation is going to be gone, as it won't be safe to enter the cove for fear of being hit or swamped by a speedboat. So we will effectively lose the use of that cove. Ours is not the only scull on the pond. This past summer, more sculls have used the cove along with increased numbers of kayaks and paddleboards, which likewise need to stay in areas away from the route of speedboats. It's really strange that Mr. Raso says the area is not used for recreation. I very often wave from my scull to his employees at 8 a.m. as they arrive on a motorboat to tend the oyster farm. It's totally false to suggest that small boats can pass between rows of oyster floats. I think you've seen the photos that I took and sent in. I took them from my scull at water level, and they show that the rows are completely impassable. They are a total barrier to use, and boaters must keep their distance from them, reducing the area of the pond by more than the deeded acreage. Denying the application doesn't cripple aquaculture. There are other suitable venues. The upper pond, which is wide and less populated, provides a more suitable location for expansion. I scull in that area regularly and have seen that there is room there for motorboats and other craft to keep their distance in a way that isn't possible in Cedar Cove. I note that you have heard from a few people who support the dedication of Seeger Cove to Mr. Raso's business, and some have not mentioned that they are business colleagues, or others have admitted that they live nowhere near Seeger Cove, so they don't care about limitations on our recreation there. The existing farm will continue to answer the tourism interests that you heard about this morning. Nobody is proposing removing that. As a lawyer, I know that your job is to apply the standards of the applicable regulations. You're not deciding whether aquaculture is good or whether Perry Raso's restaurant is good or whether he had difficulties in his youth but only whether the particular location would have an adverse impact on recreational and other uses that are important to Rhode Islanders and to our coastal resources. You have overwhelming evidence that the expansion would limit recreational use and present a safety hazard, and that the inescapable conclusion that you should reach is recommending a denial of his application. Thank you very much for the attention and all the time that you are devoting to this.
Thank you, Ms. Hodgson. Now Carl Wadenstein.
Video. Good morning.
Good morning.
Members of CRMC and the commission. I'm going to tell you a little bit of story about living on Potter's Pond. First off, my name is Carl Wadenston. I've been a resident of Potter's Pond since 1974, and I think I'm in the small percentage of the youngest, longest residing resident on the pond. I have 4 children, and we have a new grandchild. I'm also president of a manufacturing company in Rhode Island. And we were founded in 1962, and we moved to Rhode Island in 1973. So I can sympathize with Perry as an owner and trying to be a manufacturing company in Rhode Island, the challenges and the things that we face. I also sit on the Commerce Board of Rhode Island, and I've sat there for 3 decades. And today, I'm not here as a board member of the Commerce Board. I'm here today as Carl, the resident and friend of Potter's Pond. And as a business owner, I truly understand the fine line that we walk on the growth and the ability to expand and thrive our businesses. We have organizations. I have facilities in Canada. I have facilities in the UK and Australia. And these things become real big challenges on what is the highest and best use for the facilities and the places we need to go as a manufacturer. Not much unlike Perry and trying to find the highest and best used places that he can farm, right? So being a business owner, we are both held by legislation and the rules of our community, as well as our personal responsibility to the community to grow equitably and try and figure out what the balance is. There's always a balance between business and the environment and the community and legislation. And in finding the right site can be very, very challenging. So I recognize that challenge, and I'm concerned for what is the highest and best use for Cigar Cove. I have some photos here as well that I'd like to bring up in just a moment. I'd like to say this though, I am extremely proud of Perry, maybe even more so than anybody that's spoken this morning as a Rhode Islander and as a business owner. The challenges in Rhode Island, and we all know the ranking of the business climate in Rhode Island, we are at the bottom of the rung. And to do that and to navigate and employ people in this state is becoming ever more challenging than ever before. So I understand that. Perry has passion beyond what I see most leaders of organizations have. He has innovation and creativity, and he loves aquaculture. But Perry also loves his community. So my plea is really for Perry to think about and to charge this board with finding and helping to find Perry sites that have higher and better use. In discussions with Perry, and I'm not an aquaculturist, I'm a manufacturer. We make vibration equipment. You know, I've been on the pond, I've explored every inch of that pond, but in discussions with Perry is deep water and moving water are the quintessential things to raise oysters quickly, to get the right shapes, consistency, and flavor. Now that pond is shallower and shallower and shallower every year. So I'm going to urge that the board here and the commission try and help him find places that are more suitable, where instead of impeding on the recreationalization of the pond, which is extensive, and you'd heard everybody say that we look at how do we commercialize a resource that we have in Rhode Island, a resource of aquaculture. We have the largest amount of seafront per capita, I think, in our state of any other state. So how do we maximize on that to employ people and to get the Rhode Island name out there? And this is a problem. It's a real problem, because now you have the sentiment of people that live on the pond and the sentiment of people that want to grow their businesses and grow Rhode Island. I got that in ACES. This is a conundrum here. I'd like to show my first picture if I could. Can I have share screen?
You may, if you're authorized by our moderator.
Oh, moderator, would I have permission to do that?
Yes, you do.
Okay, I have my IT guy here, so I put my mask on for a second, just so we can get that picture. So the picture I'm about to show you, I'm an avid photographer, and I've been taking pictures on this pond since the 70s. This is a picture from 1993. Can everyone see this picture?
We can see a series of pictures. Maybe if you click on it, it'll expand.
I want to get one picture. That one? Can you see one picture?
What I see are 5 pictures, small pictures across this screen, but I'm.
How about now?
Not different.
This picture right there. Click on it. You have to share that screen. Can you see the photo now?
I see a lighthouse, yes.
No, you have this screen. You'd think we knew what we're doing with IT. We have one of the best IT groups in the country. Can you see the picture now?
I still see a lighthouse.
All right, I'll let him play around with that. The picture I'm going to show shows the vast area parallel to the barrier beach in the foreground, that the entire space now is consistent of the oyster farm. This is a pre-picture of the oyster farm area. And that's when we'll play with that. And this is why I asked IT to come in here. Can you see the picture now?
I don't see any pictures.
Okay, so we're gonna, he'll monkey around with that. So besides living on the pond for a long time, I'm second generation American. Doesn't have much to do with this conversation today, but it does. In Sweden, they have a notion, it's called all man's right. And I think that what people have been pleading for, and the ambassadors of the pond, is all man's right is that when we have natural resources, that the recreational aspect of those resources trump the commercialization of resources. And when this happens, the pond becomes a place that it is currently and has been for a long time, a place that people can come from all over, for tourists, for people that live on the pond, and friends and family. I've been using the pond and water skiing on the pond since 1974. My children have learned how to boat on this pond. And those things are so critical because Rhode Island is the ocean state. And the ocean state, I think, is at the essence of what we're all trying to do here, is figure out, how does the ocean state look in the years to come? How do we grow both our businesses? How do we grow our experiences for people, and do them both cautiously?
Okay, we I've seen a couple of pictures close up now.
Which one are you seeing now?
With a few kids in a small boat.
Yep. So these are my 4 children in a small boat going out to the pond. They've grown up on the pond and continue to use the pond almost every day of every time. Next picture. Can you see this picture now? Oops. Hold on a second. Sorry. Can you see? Sorry, guys.
Okay. So you're at about 10 minutes. So we want to see your pictures, but
Okay.
if you be efficient.
Okay. So can you see the picture now of the barrier reef or the barrier island? Forget it.
Yeah. I mean, I see a picture. Yes.
I'm sorry, guys. Trying to do this and navigate and speak is very disconcerting. So I have to apologize for trying to do this. So this is a picture from 1993 looking out, and there's no obstructions to the pond. You can go and pass wherever you like in the pond. And I understand, you know, what Perry's trying to do. I get it in ACES, and I really want to see him succeed. I want to see Rhode Island succeed, right? I really want to see Rhode Island succeed. But there have to be higher and better use places for this. In the early to mid 90s, University of Rhode Island had a research project that they had at the head of the pond called Skier's Pond. And they had buoys there. It caused more mayhem than you can imagine in an area that's heavily trafficked and heavily populated. And it was just an obstruction to everything that we were doing. So in conclusion here, I'd really urge that this commission use the power and the depth and breadth that you people have to help Perry find a site that he has deep water, that he has moving water, and to support this aquaculture business and have citizens and have business work together in unison. Right now, everybody is at odds, and it really, really hurts me as a friend of Perry's and a person that's lived on the pond for a long time, and as a Rhode Islander that fights. I fight every day on the Commerce Commission to get more businesses here and to do more things in Rhode Island. Rhode Island does not have unlimited resources. We have to do more with less, and we have to really think about how do we get both competing urgencies to work together and get the best. So thank you for the time, and I'm really, really sorry for the pictures, but that's my story, and God bless you all, and let's hope that we make some good decisions for South County, for Perry, and for all of us.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Ed Stappins.
Dude, you got me so far off of whack. What happened?
When you shared, but they'll give you permission.
Madam Chair, I do not see that individual in the attendees room. Oh, someone just raised their hand. Is this Mr. Stappins?
Morning. Good morning. Am I heard?
You're heard. Is this Mr. Stappins?
Stappins is how you pronounce it, ma'am.
Oh, Stappins, yes. We can hear you. We can't see you.
Okay, well, that's probably good for you.
You can do whatever you want, video on or off, as long as we can hear you.
My name's Ed Stappins. My family has owned property on Cigar Cove for most, if not all, of my nearly 63 years of life. As a matter of fact, the applicant rented a room from my parents for a number of years, many years, and had conversations years ago with Perry when he was first starting, I believe, in this business about the ability to really make a business out of sending away for seeds in the mail, and then the whole process of turning him into, I guess now, inventory for his restaurant. Again, which, you know, the part that he didn't tell me about and that affected me was that he planned to do it over in the flats. And I know that's a done deal. He has his lease over in the flats. But I have a disability. The first part of my life, I enjoyed the recreational gem of Cigar Cove that it is. As a able-bodied person, water skiing and sailing and snorkeling, fishing, quahoging, all of the above. Then in 1991, I was paralyzed, and I thought that my days of enjoying Cigar Cove were over. But over time, I found out that I was able to get myself with help into a raft and paddle myself over to the flats where the current lease is, because of the nature of the water over there, where it's shallow and sandy and safe, because I can't feel anything from the chest down. I was concerned other spots where there's rocks and barnacles of getting cut and not knowing it. But over in the flats, I was able to use that and bring my kids and grandkids over and spend hours quahogging with my hands and using that part of the pond. And it was liberating for me. I didn't have to fight gravity. I could float around in the pristine water. It was wonderful. And then I slowly started to see activity over there. I wasn't sure. It was unfamiliar activity. And then eventually, you know, we see what it looks like now. It's turned into, I don't know how to even describe what it looks like now. It's certainly all the contraptions, and I don't venture over there any longer. And I'm just hoping that the same thing doesn't happen inside the pond over here in the cove where the proposed spot is, because you know, simply put, I just don't understand how towed water sports and the proposed lease can safely coexist. I mean, pretty much to me, it's one or the other. We're either going to have the applicants farm there, or we're going to have people safely utilizing the pond like we have for generations. Because you know, the pond is just, like many people have said, it's not big enough to have both. And you know, older people like me that are experienced boaters, I wouldn't risk towing any loved one or friend around the pond, knowing that, you know, should they wipe out over in that area, that they could get hurt, you know, or injured or killed. And, you know, I have a spinal cord injury, and in my family, one spinal cord injury is enough. I wouldn't risk it. So I know there's been a lot of talk about one less skier if this happens. Well, you know, that one less skier is going to definitely be me, because I'm not going to use my 15-foot whaler with a 70 and try to make it around the loop with that thing in the way. It's just not going to happen safely. And you know, that, like I said, I have a 15-foot boat. Can you imagine there's many other boats that are much bigger in the pond. And I don't know how in the world they would try to make the turn around with the 3 acres taken away at the north end like that. It's just not going to happen. So I strongly oppose, and I urge the board to the CRMC members here to take into account the fact that that this pond has been used for generations, and I just don't understand how one person can swoop in and take that away from us all. You know, I don't understand how, you know, years ago, my neighbor was admonished by CRMC for putting grass clippings next to the side of the pond. And, you know, because I guess the part of what the CRMC does is to preserve the coastal feature. But, you know, if you take a look at what's happened to the flats, it was once a beautiful, pristine just a gorgeous postcard of a place, and what it looks like now. I don't know if people have seen the pictures of what it's like, a wasteland with all these contraptions over there, and it's just ugly. I don't understand how that is preserving the coastal feature by allowing this to go through. But I've said my piece, and thanks for listening.
Madam Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you. I said that we'll now take Becky Durkin. Sorry about that.
Becky, I don't see your name. If you are here or if you're on the phone, can you please press *9 to raise your hand? Madam Chair, Becky has not come forward.
Okay. We can call for her again at the end, like with Mr. Meyer. All right, now we're going to go to our list of people that we've called in previous meetings, but were not available. And some of which I understand have confirmed that they will speak today. But I'll start with Chris Robock.
Good morning.
Good morning. We can hear you, Mr. Robock, not see you.
Okay.
You can proceed without it, but I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Chris Robock. I'm a commercial fisherman. I've been a lifelong resident of Rhode Island for almost 5 decades. I grew up on Point Judith Pond. I live in Snug Harbor. I have my whole life. I've been a commercial and recreational fisherman my whole life, and I've spent over 40 years on Potters and Point Judith and East Ponds. Growing up, I've done commercially fished for steamers and quahogs, green crabs, blue shell crabs, eels, and stripers and fluke in the ponds, and recreationally those same things as well as started water skiing when I was 6, and have for the last 4 decades water skied and wakeboarded and kneeboarded over the years, and almost exclusively in Potter's Pond. And I'm just wanted to call to speak in favor of Perry's lease, because I think this particular area will have the least impact on any human activities on the pond. Not only am I a proponent of any aquaculture that Rhode Island can allow, but this particular spot will have the least impact. I've been water skiing and kneeboarding for 40 years on that pond, and I've almost hardly ever seen a person in that particular spot that all these people say that are their favorite recreational area. I've been water skiing for 40 years, and everybody who water skis goes to the north end of the pond. And I've participated in a lot of other recreational activities, kayaking as well, but never have I seen the amount of activity in that area that this lease would prohibit. So it's I'm in favor 100% of aquaculture expansion anyway, but this particular spot is absolutely the best spot in that pond that would have the least impact on any human recreational or commercial activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roebuck. Now I'll call Nessa Richmond.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you, not see you.
Great. Give me 5 seconds to ask the electrician to stop hammering in the basement.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I've been waiting for the electrician for a number of weeks and didn't want to reschedule again today.
We can hear you.
Thank you. So thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I'm the network director of the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. I'm also a South County resident, and I am speaking in support of the application for the proposed aquaculture area in Cedar Cove on behalf of myself as network director and as a resident. So the council was established about 10 years ago, and our job is to work to create an accessible, economically vibrant, environmentally sustainable food system in the state of Rhode Island. And we work with a large statewide collaboration of diverse stakeholders from all sectors of the food system. And we do all of our work through developing partnerships and programs and working for good food policy designed to improve the state's food system. And today, I simply want to say that the proposed area is aligned with the Food Policy Council's mission to promote a healthy food system in the state and an economically vibrant food system in the state. It's also aligned with the Rhode Island Strategic Plan for marketing of Rhode Island seafood and for the state's overarching food strategy, which has been designed to create a resilient food system for our state that takes the environment into account, as well as economic vitality for that food system. And those are my comments, very brief. I would just want to note in addition that the pond is not a private resource. It's a state resource, and it should be available for a variety of uses. Thanks very much for your time and for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Ms. Richmond. Ben Wilkes.
Ben, I don't see your name. If you're in the attendees room, can you please raise your hand? I am not seeing any hands being raised, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll go on to Melissa Juanito.
Melissa, if you're in the attendees room, can you please raise your hand? I do not see your name. Madam Chair, I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay, what about Frank Mazza?
Mr. Mazza, if you are in the room, can you please raise your hand? I'm not seeing anything, Madam Chair.
Okay. I think I saw some chat by Deborah Garber, so hopefully she's here. She's up next.
She is here.
Miss Garber, I can see your screen with your name. I can't hear you. You're on mute. And we still can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Deborah Grossman Garber, and I'm a longtime resident of South Kingstown. I retired 6 years ago as the Associate Commissioner for Higher Education for the state of Rhode Island. And prior to that role, I worked for 18 years at the University of Rhode Island with Sea Grant and later with the College of the Environment and Life Sciences, where I taught and mentored students in their undergraduate research programs. In 2001, I served as the co-convener of the URI Honors Colloquium on Sustainability and the Environment. I'm familiar with many of the issues that are being raised in this application, very familiar. I first met and began mentoring Perry Raso in 2001 when he was serving as a coastal undergraduate research fellow at URI. And he was under the direction of Professor Michael Rice. You won't be surprised, Perry was studying the effects of shellfish aquaculture on total organic nitrogen load around shellfish farms in Rhode Island. His passion is long-seated. Perry has been remarkable among his peers, always. When I knew him, he put himself through undergraduate and his graduate programs by waking up year-round at dawn to dig wild quahogs and little necks before his classes, just as a means of eating and paying for his tuition. He's been wild harvesting in the ponds since the age of 12, and he's deeply knowledgeable about Rhode Island coastal pond environment. And as such, he's been a real asset to his professors and to his community for many years. I would venture that Perry is among the most knowledgeable individuals in Rhode Island about the biology, the stratigraphy, the geology, the history and usage of Potter Pond. He's lived it, he has breathed it, and he has studied it. He knows every square inch from the pond's bottom layers to the shore and beyond. You could say that the pond is his lifeblood. And Perry has always impressed me over the years in many different situations as a man who is deeply humble, ethical, and collaborative. For these reasons, and for others, I'm here today to register strong, unequivocal support for the proposed 3-acre shellfish farm in Cedar Cove. I have read the lease application and other associated documents. I have listened to the testimony of expert witnesses over the past meetings. I have toured and personally observed the geography of the pond in situ on several occasions. There are several reasons for my advocacy. Shellfish aquaculture in the way that Perry conducts his operations will not degrade the water quality of Potter Pond or Cedar Cove and is likely to improve it. This controversy has been well studied and documented by notable scientists, and this topic should be put to rest. The present application for 3 acres fully respects CRMC's permitting guidelines, as expert witnesses have previously testified. Total aquaculture activity will not exceed the mandated 3% on the pond. There is no encroachment here on Mr. Raso's part, as alleged by others. Cedar Cove is a suitable choice for the lease for several reasons. The deep water there is essential for the successful culture of scallops, and it is relatively out of the way of most of Potter Pond traffic. There does seem to be adequate acreage in the cove, as others have attested, for the pursuit of water skiing, albeit the activity may have to be reduced from 3 boats to 2 boats. I don't think that is much of a sacrifice. As for safety concerns, when I hear about safety, I think about speed, and perhaps a solution could be that all people on the pond slow down. There's a lot of quick traffic that needs to slow down for everybody's safety. You know, Cedar Cove is, as a part of Potter Pond, is a multi-use public state resource, which should reflect public benefit in the many, many ways that it can be used to help move Rhode Island forward into the future. With his lease, Perry is addressing clean, sustainable food production systems, which is critical for our nation's future and for the planet. And you just heard that testimony from a previous commenter. I believe that his efforts will continue to maintain jobs and economic viability for Rhode Island workers and their families, and particularly in South County. And that recreation and leisure will continue to thrive in the pond. We are only speaking about a small amount of space. All activities can and should continue to coexist even in Potter Pond. The solution will be to require an adaptation by all users. There's a sensitive aspect to this conflict as I listen, particularly at this point in our nation's history. I have to point out, because no one else has, that there's a strong thread in many, many of the arguments that we've been hearing that we must honor past privilege and usage exclusivity for those who live along the pond and can afford to live along the pond. I don't believe that this should be used as a means of deciding what is most important activity on the pond. The pond must be retained as a public resource for all citizens of Rhode Island, whether there be entrepreneurs or water skiers or boaters or fishermen. We can all coexist. We can unite. That is a present theme in our society. I urge you to act in favor of promoting Rhode Island's sustainable future by approving this 3-acre lease and marching into the future boldly and inclusively. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you for listening.
Now on to John Krikorian.
John, I do not see your name. Can you please raise your hand? I'm not seeing a hand up.
Okay, we'll take David Stein.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. We can't see you.
You can't see me. Hold on. How's that?
Yes, we can see you now.
Hold on, let me. Okay. So I appreciate the opportunity to be heard today. I have two houses on Gale Drive, and my family and I use Potter's Pond for recreation. For me, this is all about water quality. My houses have septic systems, as I believe all other houses in the area also have septic systems. And of course, over the years, we've had a lot of development along the pond and in the area. This all affects the quality of the water. Oysters are a proven way of improving the water quality. To be honest with you, I'm a bit surprised to hear all these complaints about safety in the pond. As I understand it, this lease is less than 3% of the total pond acreage. Given my experience, I really don't see the amount of boating that I'm hearing in this hearing from people. And I definitely don't see it in the area of the proposed lease. And as far as safety, the issue that I see there are reckless operators of jet skis and boats. But again, they're not anywhere near this lease from my experience. So I guess I believe the potential improvement in water quality outweighs the exceptional small effect it may have on the recreation for me and for others. Therefore, I'm strongly in favor of granting this lease. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. All right, that takes us to the end of our list, but I'm just going to go back and call out those who weren't available when we called them out to see if they're present now. And I may not have everyone, so Mr. Willis or Mr. Moore, correct me if I don't have them all. So the first one is Matthew Meyer. And if Mr. Meyer, you're here, please raise your hand, as has been instructed by Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, can you explain for those who may not know how you raise your hand?
There's two ways you can raise your hand. You can click on the screen and it should prompt you, or if you open up the attendees list on the right-hand side, and they're halfway down the screen on the right, you should see a raise hand button. If you cannot find either one of those, just simply put a comment in the chat box just to identify yourself, and I can do it that way as well.
Are you seeing any raised hand for Mr. Meyer?
I am not.
Okay, so moving on to Mark Cavanaugh, who we did see his screen. We just couldn't hear him. Mr. Cavanaugh, if you'd like to try again, now's your time. Okay, I see you, you're on mute. Mr. Cavanaugh, you're still on mute. Just need to hover at the bottom of your screen, the lower left-hand side of your screen, and you'll see a microphone. You just need to click that and it'll unmute you. And if we can't get you working, then you can provide your comments in the chat box. I'm going to wait till 11:40, and if we don't have you, then you can add your comments in the chat box. Okay, it's 11:40, so I'm going to call someone else. You can put your comments in the chat box. The next is Becky Durkin. Any hand, Mr. Moore?
I'm not seeing one, Madam Chair.
Okay. Ben Wilkes.
Not seeing anything, Madam Chair.
Okay. Melissa Bonito.
Her name is not listed on here.
Are there any hands up that are not associated with the names of the people who we?
No, there isn't.
Okay. All right. What about Frank Mazza?
I do not see that name either.
Okay, and final, John Krikorian.
I'm not seeing that name either, and there are no hands up.
Okay. Can you take Mr. Cavanaugh off? I don't believe he can get his technology working.
Everybody's back in the attendee room.
I still see Mark's screen. Okay, great. Right, so we've gone through our list of public speakers. We've heard from people. We've received additional written comment. We've looked at what's been submitted in the chat feature. And Mr. DeSisto, unless you tell me otherwise, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this subcommittee meeting.
That's in order, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And as I indicated, at this time, we're going to give the applicant the ability to rebut anything that they heard during the public comment portion. Ms. Noonan, how much time do you think you'll need for that?
I don't anticipate probably more than 10 or 15 minutes of at max.
Okay, so I'm going to take a break then. because people have been drinking coffee and we've been going out for a while. So I will, let's come back at noon and then we'll have a full hour.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Ryan, it's Beth Noonan. Can you let Audie Osgood into our meeting?
All set.
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
before we begin with the rebuttal, I just,
Hold on. Let me, Don Gomez has to, just, let's wait for Don.
okay,
Okay, go ahead.
do we have I just want to make, do we have everybody?
It looks like hold on, Don.
I see his screen. I don't see him.
Mr. Gomez, could you turn on your video? We're just, I thought, okay. Now waiting for Mr. Koya. Oh, I see him. All right, I believe we have everyone back. Mr. Capizzo, you got a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just before we start the rebuttal, I would just, my understanding is the rebuttal is an opportunity for the applicant to address, I believe you said what was testified to during the public comment. I would object to the Deprete, for the record, to the Deprete engineering report coming in. I don't believe there was any engineering testimony during the public. I know there wasn't any engineering testimony. All the engineering testimony was in the applicant's presentation as well as the intervener's presentation, including the ESS report, which was provided to Ms. Noonan prior to the hearing. And there's no new information that was presented during the public testimony. So I would object to that, as well as the two other documents that were provided by Ms. Noonan from DEM. And I just wanted that noted for the objection, recognizing that the commission may take the testimony and the additional evidence.
Okay, Mr. Capizzo. Ms. Noonan, would you like to respond?
For clarification, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It's my understanding rebuttal is not limited to just the public comment. It's also to the objector's case. That is the point of rebuttal traditionally. The two issues we're going to address are safety and confusion over the amount of acreage in Seeger Cove, both of which arose, I believe, during objector's case, as well as the public comment. These are very narrowly focused issues that I believe are appropriate for rebuttal.
That's correct. Will you remind me, did you reserve your right to rebut after the objector's case?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, if you reserved your right, then you would have the opportunity for both responding to objector's case as well as public comments. Mr. DeSisto, do you have any issue with that?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Mr. Capizzo, your objection is overruled. It's noted for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the only other request that inquiry I should say I have is in regards to the rebuttal testimony. It's my understanding that there will be no cross-examination of this witness. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, if you just note my objection to that for the record.
I will. Thank you.
Before
you can address that at the end of this, I'm going to ask for post-hearing briefs and any comment, argument, affidavit you want to supply with that post-hearing brief, I think would serve to respond to any testimony that's presented in rebuttal by Ms. Noonan.
And there is one other item, Madam Chair, that I had submitted late yesterday. I had requested that if the commission is going to entertain or accept two documents provided by Ms. Noonan, DEM, access to public record requests that she's intending to enter into evidence, I would request that I be allowed to introduce what is entitled as the 2019 Recreational Boating Statistics, which is a public document published by the United States Department of Homeland Security and U.S. Coast Guard, and that the commission take judicial notice of that.
I don't think I have a problem with that, Mr. DeSisto.
Neither do I. I think it's appropriate.
I would like to raise my objection for the record. I don't believe that the objectors have a right to rebut our rebuttal, which is exactly what this document is for. He had the right and opportunity to do it during his case in chief when safety was one of the major concerns that he raised. So I don't think procedurally it's correct to allow Sir rebuttal on a case I haven't even put in yet. Finally, it's also, I believe, fairly irrelevant and not of assistance to this board, which I think is the question, as it just is national document without anyone assisting them going through it. So on those grounds, I object to the admission of that procedurally and substantively.
Okay. I think I'd still like to allow it to come in as a reference and for us to take notice of it. So I'll overrule the objection and it's noted for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Then, shall I start?
Yes, please.
Thank you. The first two exhibits are that I would like entered, picking up from where we left off, are exhibits 18 and 19. These are both responses from APRA requests, which are the access to public records requests pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 38-2-1. Exhibit 18 pertains only specifically to Potter Pond. Exhibit 19 expands out to Point Judith Pond, Potter Pond, Green Hill Pond, Ninigret Pond, also known as Charleston Pond, and Quanaketag Pond. And the purpose we put forward these records is a request for, we had asked for any and all accident data relating to aquaculture sites. Both of these requests were denied because such records did not exist. I move 18 and 19 as full exhibits, and there will be no testimony on those.
Mr. DeSisto, did we, yeah, I can just accept those, correct? We already had objection on that.
That's correct, yes.
All right.
Thank you. And then the last piece of evidence in this hearing, and again, thank you to all the committee members for their time and patience during this hearing, is a letter dated January 2nd, 2023. I would like that marked as Exhibit 20 for identification. And Mr. Osgood is here. I don't know if he needs to be resworn or reminded that he is under oath, but he will testify to this document.
Mr. DeSisto?
I'd like to re-swear him. Mr. Osgood, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please restate your name and spell it for the record.
Audie D. Osgood, AUDIEOSGOOD.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osgood. How are you this afternoon, I guess now?
I'm doing well.
Great.
Thank you.
In regards to your testimony that you gave before this subcommittee, did you also have an opportunity to observe the testimony of the objector's witness, Payson Whitney?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And I think, as we know, that when we're dealing with the application and the 5% rule, that's applied just to Potter Pond. And I think even the point was made today that total aquaculture will only be 3% of Potter Pond, leaving 90% available. But during the hearings, there was much discussion of the Seeger Cove acreage, Seeger Cove being a subset of Potter Pond. And so I would, if you could tell the committee what I asked you to do following the conclusion of the objector's case and much of the public testimony.
Certainly. I was asked to go back and just take a closer look at the numbers and provide a table sort of to combine everything and summarize what the restrictions were to the cove, to Seegar Cove, based on the 200-foot buffer from the stationary objects, in this case being the shoreline and docks.
All right. Could we screen share exhibit 20, please? I think Leslie was going to do that for me. Leslie? Great. Can everyone see the January 22nd, 2021 letter from Dupreet Engineering?
Yes, I can't see the full letter, so you'll, okay, now we can see the full letter.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. Osgood, can you please tell the subcommittee what this document is?
Sure. So this is the table of those areas that I was just explaining. So we noted that the total area of Seegar Cove is 53.5 acres approximately. That if we apply the buffer, the 200-foot restriction or buffer off of the shoreline and the docks, we end up with approximately 36.8 acres remaining available. I'm sorry, that's what's restricted by the by that buffer. So taking that away from the 53.5, there are 16.7 acres available for towed water sports where they're permitted by ordinance. And then we looked at the proposed conditions of the rectangular 3-acre farm. And obviously the same 36.8 acres is restricted. There's a portion of the farm outside of the 200-foot buffer and a portion inside. The portion outside that would encroach on that 16.7 acres is 0.8 acres. That's of the farm area itself. And then once we apply the 200-foot offset from that area encompasses 4.1 acres. So the total restriction then is 41.7, or reduces the area for towed water sports to 11.8 acres.
And Audie, just to be clear, that proposed conditions is for the original rectangular Plan A, if you will, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And then the third column to the right is the layout B conditions, which is the, I think was called the polygon farm configuration, which is has more area within the existing 200-foot buffer area. So only 0.3 acres of that configuration would occupy the, I'll say, unrestricted portion of Seegar Cove. The 200-foot buffer beyond that occupies another 3.5. So for a total of 3.8 acres that would be restricted by the pond or by the farm, with a net area then of 12.9 acres where towed water sports are permitted.
Okay, and just to be clear, as you set forth in your first paragraph, this is applying those 200-foot buffers from the town of South Kingston's ordinance, correct?
Correct.
All right. Anything further to state on this, Mr. Osgood?
No, I don't believe so.
And that's your stamp that you've affixed to this document?
Yes, it is.
All right, I would move Exhibit 20 full. And we can take it off the screen share unless,
Yeah, as discussed earlier, that's submitted in full.
I have no further questions for Mr. Osgood.
Okay, and do you have any more on your rebuttal?
Nope, that is it, Madam Chair, I am done.
Okay, because we have a little more time until 1 o'clock, I would offer to council if they want to make closing arguments. Before we do that, I think have put out a request that we would like post-hearing memos or briefs. I'd like to see those submitted to the CRMC by no later than next Friday, which is the 5th. But you can submit it as early as you want to. And, you know, I just ask if you can keep them fairly concise so we can get through the entire briefs.
Madam Chair, we'll be prepared to submit by that date.
I'm sorry. We have a workshop on the 10th. So that would give subcommittee members 5 days or so to review those. But obviously, if you get them in sooner, we'd have a longer period of time. Ms. Noonan?
My feeling is the post-hearing briefs speak for themselves. We've been at this a long time. If my colleagues, Mr. Capizzo and Mr. Wagner, want to do oral argument, I suppose they can. I just think at this point, the written briefs would be far more productive use of time. I think we know where everybody stands on the issues. But I will argue if they want to argue. Otherwise, I think I'd rather rest on our briefs.
Okay. I'll start with you, Mr. Capizzo. Do you want to make any closing argument?
I know we'll rest on our memo of facts in brief.
Okay, Mr. Wagner?
I will as well.
Okay. I guess we've been going at this a while because 3 attorneys passing up closing argument.
You should grab that opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're gonna be closing in the briefs though.
Yeah. Okay. From subcommittee members, does anyone have any questions or comments before we adjourn? Mr. Gomez.
I've got lots and lots of notes here. I was wondering if maybe Ms. Newman could refresh me on what the restriction, the South Kingstown ordinance, what that restriction applies to. Is it just motorboats or is it kayaks and numerous other craft?
Mr. Gomez, I think primarily what they go to are watercraft and towed water sports. So they don't apply to, they apply to motorized uses, not paddle boats and kayaks, correct?
Yeah, I just needed to get that clarified. I know we went through this weeks ago, it seems now, but thank you.
And I'm sure you'll see it in writing soon, so.
And we have that as an exhibit, correct?
That is correct. I believe Christian submitted the South Kingston Harbor Management Plan. Those ordinances are contained within there as well as I think separate exhibits also, if I'm correct.
Anything else from subcommittee members? Okay, Mr. DeSisto, do we need to do anything else before we move to adjourn?
No, just the motion to adjourn.
Okay, Mr. Willis, do you want to say anything from an administrative standpoint before we adjourn?
No, Madam Chair, other than that the workshop will occur on February 10th. We have the same time frame set up for everybody, and it will still be held on a Zoom webinar platform similar to this for the council members, the subcommittee members' deliberation.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. Okay, with that, I'll move to adjourn, and I think I'll just do a voice call. I won't call everyone's name, so if you can unmute, and if I can get a second to my motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, Ray Koya seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Koya. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you, everyone, for your time, and we'll see you back here in a little bit.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Be safe.